The election has our nation divided, and as much as we love sports for being that escape from the everyday realities of life, politics have infiltrated the sports world. We just heard from 3 NBA coaches who are speaking out, and ladies, I open the question to you. As we listen to NFL players and coaches, we listen to NBA players and coaches speaking out. There are differences that are noticeable between the 2 leagues.
I think they highlight, I think they highlight the different cultures between the 2 leagues. On the NBA side, you have a different type of ownership, a younger ownership. Guys like Mark Cuban, who readily wade into these political waters. You have a commissioner who has openly encouraged his players to take social stances. You have locker rooms that have a greater percentage of minority players than you do in the NFL. You have guaranteed contracts where guys don't have to be afraid to speak their minds. You're really seeing that highlighted right now.
Yeah, I think that I've always viewed the NBA as being progressive and proactive. And certainly, I really admire these head coaches for speaking up the way they did. Certainly in the case of even Stan Van Gundy and Greg Popovich, extemporaneously, they just came out and said it. They weren't even asked any questions. This is something that they felt that they had to get off their minds. In the NFL, for example, we saw Bill Belichick addressing the issue of a letter that he had written to Donald Trump, but he was asked about it. He didn't volunteer the info. He was asked, and then he had to respond to it. So I think in the NFL, there's certainly a feeling of wanting to stay away from it a little bit more amongst the coaching ranks. I do know for sure of at least one head coach who is diametrically opposed politically to his owner. And that's even more reason that this NFL head coach would not speak out.
Layla, we've seen this arc, and it started, quite frankly, with your father and Jim Brown, and then it went to Michael Jordan saying, hey, well, Republicans buy shoes too, and athletes trying to stay away. When you see this now, do you feel like this is in my father's legacy?
Definitely. I mean, that's without question, but it's just that I've always said that each individual is different. You know, just because you're an athlete, you don't have to, you know, you're not going to necessarily become this person who's going to take a political stance. You know, I never was really involved in politics that much, but I mean, as we know, our whole nation is divided right now, and obviously it's going to pour over into sports as well, and it's difficult for everybody, you know, because there's just a lot going on, you know, and I think that, as you can see, everybody kind of handles it differently. Everybody has their own personal beliefs and the way that they want to handle their team, and, you know, it's just...
I love that NBA players and coaches feel comfortable. You know, I think the greatest thing we can ever do is create dialogue and have conversations, and if these coaches are speaking out, they're speaking out with the support of their players behind them. They would never speak out for their players without having discussed it with the team. And I can say, being on college campuses, you know, each weekend over the course of the last few weeks, I have witnessed protests on college campuses. These athletes are so aware of it, despite Nick Saban saying that he had no idea the election was even going on. Of course, he strategically says that so his team doesn't consider it a distraction.
Can we talk about that? Is it the responsibility of college coaches, who are essentially the molders of young minds, to tell their players, you should be engaged in the country around us? We've seen college coaches who have taken their players to the polls on Election Day.
I don't know if it's so much the coach imposing his opinion on that, but don't act like it doesn't exist. That's the thing. What is the message that Nick Saban, as a head coach and a supposed molder of young men, is given when he says, I didn't even know it was Election Day? It is reported that he has voted absentee ballot, but you know, the idea that it doesn't exist, and I just for 1 second, I need to go back and juxtapose this with Greg Popovich, okay? He gave his players a DVD of the 2012 presidential debate. This year, he gave his players the book from Ta-Nehisi Coates, an incredible book written by one of the most prominent black journalists in the world. He is looking at his players and saying, I want you to be open-minded about this, as opposed to Nick Saban, who, if players listen to their head coach, what's the message they're getting? I didn't even know it was Election Day, so players, you shouldn't know it's Election Day either. Just keep your focus on the next game.
What we're finding at every level is that it's up to the individual coach and his or her relationship with the players. And what's great about college for these athletes is they can know that coming in. They can make their college decision knowing what kind of a coach and a leader they're going to be getting into.
Teacher and
the professional level, that's not always
teacher.
the case. And teacher, exactly.